If you were an 80s kid, like me, then there's a lot of franchises that you came to know and love, and they had good guys who would save the day and bad guys with their many nefarious schemes, and amongst the worst of the bad guys were these guys, the Decepticons. I know, I have Megatron and Starscream here, but there were hundreds upon hundreds of Decepticons who had hundreds upon hundreds of bad ideas. Bad guy ideas. And some of those bad guy ideas were just awful. They're just terrible stinkers that were kind of doomed from the start. Which brings us to the question for the countdown this week, and that is, of course, the top 10 worst, most just terrible Decepticon plots, schemes, whatever you want to call it. That's going to be our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble host, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you're at it, loud 'em up, baby. And hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton. It lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, Transformers Collectors, NL, The Autobot Family, Transformers vs. G.I. Joe vs. DC Universe vs. Marvel, and Autobot City Central. Oh, there's a lot of groups, man, that I admin. All of those and the links to all of my social media are down in the description below. You can help the channel by using the donate link, checking us out on Patreon, see what we offer to you through Teespring, or of course you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. And this is a countdown of the top 10 just worst Decepticon schemes. Now some people said, by worst do you mean like the most evil, or by worst do you mean just the terrible ones, just the the stinkers? I meant the stinkers, the ones that are just bad ideas, man. And the voting was really interesting and very nostalgic for me. Of course, we're going to do as we always do with these. We're going to start off with our honorable mentions first. And coming in first in our honorable mentions is Cyclonus' plan to cure Galvatron of his insanity by sending him to a psychiatric planet. A planet that Galvatron actually ends up driving insane. So that plan didn't really work out. It scored enough votes to make the honorable mentions. As well, Carnage and C Minor, that whole storyline was in the honorable mentions. The idea of cyber forming a planet was in there, largely because it's done so slow and so piecemeal, and it's almost done with them plotting and walking through that it takes too long to do, so it's not something that's an immediate threat. It's something that can easily be combated, and it's trying to happen in so many places. It's almost like it's too expensive of an idea. Personally, I like the idea, and I like the fact that it's a race against time to stop it from happening, but a lot of people did not share that sentiment and took an honorable mention, as well as destroying the Predacons in Transformers Prime. I mean, Shockwave had this grand plan to make the Predacons. They were going to be the linchpin for putting the Decepticons over the top in their war. And as soon as Megatron felt somewhat threatened, he had them all wiped out, all destroyed. What a waste of time and resources. And the last of the honorable mentions goes to basically anything involving the sun. Like, there were a few different schemes that involved the sun. For example, the Sun Harvester from Revenge of the Fallen. But the idea that everybody put forth when they mentioned the sun was, if you do something to the sun and you destroy it or you put the sun out, either its flames will engulf everything or it's gone. So now everything on all these planets come to an end. Life will come to an end without the sun. And why would you do that? You know, you escaped your planet that was running out of energy and basically dying to go to another planet, and then destroy the sun of that one so that it too dies. It makes no sense. Where do you go from there? But all of those were honorable mentions. None of them made the top 10. So who did? Well, you know what we're going to do, baby. We're going to kick things off with number 10 first. And number 10 is a kind of a weird scheme. It was when the Decepticons decided that they were going to drill to the center of the Earth. This, of course, is the episode known as The Core, where really, I think it was only done to give the Constructicons something to do. The idea that was put forth by Megatron in it was, if we tap the molten core of the Earth, we can, you know, kind of harvest all of the geothermal energy from therein. And Starscream says, or we're gonna blow up the planet. And Megatron says, oh well, what can you do? It's a good thing we got a space bridge near the drill site. So you know what, if the planet starts to become unstable, we'll just go back to Cybertron. But of course that brings us back to something that was mentioned earlier. You left Cybertron because it was dying and running out of energy. You come to a new planet and you're so hungry for the energy of that planet that you're willing to basically take the risk of destroying that planet to get it. But you might not get it, and your only escape might be going back to your planet that's dying. It's not a good scheme. Who would destroy the planet that you're on? I understand why it would be seen in such a negative light, and for that reason it takes the number 10 slot. Now number 9 takes us to one of the most ludicrous ideas that ever happened in Transformers, and you talk about how easily swayed people are by things that aren't true. I'm talking about Decepticon Day. In the episode Megatron's Master Plan, actually by part 2, we had the Autobots who were painted by Sean Berger. Oh man, that guy was terrible. He was so annoying. In Central City, painted in the light of being the bad guys to the heroic Decepticons. And the Autobot Day that was in the midst of happening was scrapped for Decepticon Day. And all the people just kind of went along with it and were like, oh, well, you have this one piece of footage. I guess the Decepticons are the good guys now. And it was like this big parade where the Decepticons were like marching through the streets to their adoring fans. You know, everybody turned on the Autobots, and the Decepticons were the heroes, and everybody just believed Sean Berger. It made the citizens of that city look idiotic, and it really, like, it was one kind of piece of footage that Sean Berger had, and like that was all it took to convince people that the Autobots were the bad guys and the Decepticons were the good guys. Obviously it was a sham and a facade, and it wasn't going to last very long. And needless to say, it didn't last very long, and soon enough everybody realized that the Decepticons were in fact the bad guys after all. But because of the shenanigans that took place and because of the votes that it got, it was able to be an idea that tied itself up at the number 9 slot of being the worst Decepticon schemes ever. Number 8 takes us to both a dance party and slavery. That's right. That's right. The Transformers mixed the dance party and slavery with Dancetron. That is the club that was in the episode Autobop. Not Autobot, Autobop. And basically what the Decepticons did was they had this hot nightclub Dancetron where they basically hypnotized the patrons so that they would serve as like free slave labor to build this building that they were constructing. It was the most idiotic thing that was uncovered by Raoul, Trax, and Blaster. But it was actually some good kind of character development for Soundwave in the episode. It really sort of made him stand out, like the, you know, what is it, like, all talk, no shock. Like, it was one of the wittiest things that Soundwave ever said. But the overall scheme of trying to hypnotize humans to do your bidding when you're already bigger and stronger because you're giant robots was kind of a foolish idea in and of itself. Why would you get the smaller, weaker things to do your bidding when you're stronger, bigger, and just plain better at it yourself? For all those reasons, Autobop takes the number 8 slot. Now number 7 had the potential to actually be a good scheme, but the way it worked out, and especially the way it worked out by the end, was just terrible. I'm talking about a prime problem. The concept of cloning Optimus Prime in and of itself wasn't a bad one because you could lead the Autobots into some pretty gnarly situations that would certainly put their existence in a precarious situation. But you have to be true to Optimus Prime, and that's where they fell short. They didn't have the character of their enemy down pat, and that's where you started to see the holes in the clone. Most notably toward the end of the episode when the clone basically wanted to abandon Spike. And the Autobots were like, you'd never abandon, especially Ironhide was like, you'd never abandon Spike, you must be the fake. And they shoot that Optimus into oblivion, and they, you know, follow the real Optimus to save the day. I think had the cloning been handled just a little bit better, a prime problem could have gone far differently and far worse for the Autobots. But because the Decepticons really didn't do their homework and kind of cloned Optimus very haphazardly, it was kind of doomed to failure. If you don't know your enemy, you're not going to succeed. And for that reason, a prime problem takes the number 7 slot for worst Decepticon plots. Number 6 only exists because of the shared Decepticon buffoonery when Megatron and Starscream accidentally created Creme Zeke. And we all know that Creme Zeke was really a little monster that became a very big problem as he consumed and consumed more and more energy and became a bigger and bigger danger and threat. The only reason that Creme Zeke existed was because of Megatron and Starscream's idiocy in the Decepticon lab itself. Maybe the guys who are more suited for battle instead of science should stay to the battlefield and leave the science to the science guys. For that reason, Creme Zeke takes the number 6 slot. And we are at the halfway mark, that most coveted of positions. And the halfway mark, number 5, is actually pretty fitting. This one is actually not quite Decepticons. This one is a Predacon plot. Any plot where Waspinator tries to ambush anybody. Most people voted for that one time he fought Optimus Primal, and that went really poorly. But any time that Waspinator thought he had a leg up on someone in battle, thought, I'll ambush him and win, he usually got blown into smithereens and pieces and had to gather himself together and go back to that CR chamber. I think that's the letter CR. I think that's right. But we all know that Waspinator had huge aspirations and thought he was far more strategic than he really was. And for Waspinator's failures, he takes the number 5 slot. You remember that time that Megatron helped some malcontents in the Middle East overthrow the actual ruler in exchange for a bit of oil? No? You don't remember that? I bet you remember the giant purple Griffin he used. There was no other reason for that idiotic thing to exist except for that specific plan. It kind of came from out of nowhere. He was going to use it for conquering, I guess, I suppose. Its existence was moronic. It definitely was not going to hide. It was the most Decepticon thing that the Decepticons ever created. It was even Decepticon purple. And it really served no purpose, and in the end it was defeated. The giant purple Griffin, the most ridiculous, moronic thing that Megatron ever came up with. And still, it only gained enough votes to solidify itself at the number 4 slot. That takes us to the top 3. Well, number 3 is one of the ones that's a little more out there, although we've sort of seen the concept already on the countdown. This one comes to us from the Marvel Comics era and really focuses around none other than Blackrock and Ratbat and Shockwave. Ratbat was a fuel auditor there, by the way, and the idea comes up from Shockwave that to prove he's a superior leader, he's going to capture an oil tanker that happens to be empty. But then the scheme gets hatched for the Car Wash of Doom. And the Car Wash of Doom, basically, you go through this wash and roll car wash, flashing lights hypnotize humans, and then the humans go and basically siphon fuel into a silo owned by BlackRock Enterprises, and that'll go to the Decepticons. Great idea. In fact, BlackRock, who himself is entranced, announces that there's going to be a Mark II. Little does anybody realize that the Mark II will actually make the hypnotic sensation permanent. And wouldn't you know it, that Sparkplug is soon to be the first customer. Well, obviously Buster, or Spike, cannot let that happen. And sure enough, by the end of it, it doesn't happen. But very soon, very close, they came to the car wash being the thing that would doom mankind to having no power. Car wash, such an innocuous thing, yet such a dangerous thing. Yet such a foolish thing. For that reason, it takes the number 3 slot as worst Decepticon plots, which, by the way, kind of falls in line with Autobot. You know what? Here's the rule of thumb I take away from all that. Stop trying to hypnotize humans. We're not real good at doing anything. Just leave us alone and do it yourself, Decepticons. Number 2 is actually somewhat of a generalization because a lot of different votes came in for this, and I felt like, you know what, the best thing to do is to kind of lump them together. I don't usually do that, but it felt very fitting for number 2. Anytime that that Starscream tried to take control of the Decepticons and overthrow Megatron. It happened in the comics, it's happened in Prime, it's happened in G1, it's happened in Unicron Trilogy, it's happened in everything. Starscream has all of these grand designs and plans and power plays. I don't think he ever would have known what to do with the power had he actually gotten it. I mean, one of the closest times was when he had his coronation in the film. And he really wasn't leader long enough to do, well, anything before he got blasted to smithereens. But that has never stopped Starscream from having huge aspirations of power, even if he doesn't know what to do with it. When you have a plan and kind of don't know what the end game is, that's kind of bound to failure, and it's kind of bound to be one of the ones that is the worst route of action to take. Because of Starscream's kind of ill-conceived notions of want and desire without any final kind of play, without any final kind of end game in sight, he has to take, man, the number 2 slot. You can't have power without an end game. Sorry, Starscream. You're just not quite good enough at the planning game. And number 1, that's where we're to now. What takes number 1? What was the worst, most moronic Decepticon plot ever? Well, do you remember Triple Takeover? That's when Astrotrain and Blitzwing both kind of get sick and tired of Megatron and Starscream and say, hey, we'd be better leaders. Except Astrotrain goes off and decides he's going to use a bunch of human trains as his, servants and to do his bidding. Doesn't work out. Blitzwing's plan isn't much better. He says, hey, here's a football stadium. This is a good place to set up camp. And he makes the coach like his strategic specialist. I don't even think he ever had any forces to actually follow him. Both of the Triple Changers had these aspirations of leading, but had absolutely no clue what they were doing. In fact, the whole kind of description for the episode says that Astrotrain and Blitzwing depose Megatron and Starscream and wreak havoc. That's it. And that's exactly what they did. Don't forget that these are the same 2 guys that got caught in the booby trap that was supposed to take Optimus Prime out. That gave us the famous quote of Optimus saying, amazing, a booby trap that actually catches boobies. And those were Astrotrain and Blitzwing. Go figure. You want to talk about 2 morons with grand aspirations but no brains for the plan, you gotta be talking about Blitzwing and Astrotrain. And there you go, we've got from 10 to 1 once again, 10 of course being the core where they went to the core of the Earth, and 1 being Triple Takeover. I mean, I love the characters of Blitzwing and Astrotrain, but the guys aren't exactly rocket scientists, even though, Astrotrain is a spaceship. But, like, they're not going to be leaders. Like, they're good soldiers, they're good followers, but they're never going to be leaders, even if they have the aspiration to do so. They just, they're a lot more brawn over brain, for sure. We had votes come in for Low Road from Beast Wars. We had votes come in for letting Starscream live. That was a bad idea. Votes came in for the Seed from the movies and that whole idea. Votes came in for the pillars and bringing Cybertron to Earth and that whole idea. Bot had a couple of votes. I don't know, what's another one here that had a couple of votes? So many great ideas, man. Well, so many terrible ideas, actually. I don't know. Is there anything else there that stands out to me? Oh, in Energon, Megatron trying to revive Unicron, even though he had been the one that took out Unicron to begin with. It never did make any sense. Anyway, there you go. That's it. Let me know where your favorites fell. Did they make the list? Did they not make the list? Did they even get a vote? I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we offer to you through Teespring, or of course hit the join button right here on YouTube. While you're at it, hit the subscribe button. Stick around, man. Have some fun with us here on the channel. Don't forget that somehow, some way, man, each and every single day you do make a difference. And I look forward, baby, to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres, or the old-fashioned way, baby, right here inside the videos.